Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shyam Vishnupad Paramhams Parajkacharya Shota Shota Shri Srimati's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Granth Raj Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Shri New Goloka Dham Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to the lotus feet Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Brinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Brinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Brinda. We're reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 20. The chapter is entitled The Lord Instructs Sanatana Goswami, and it is text 116. Aparayam mitastvanyam. Does everyone have the verse? Oh, you don't? Okay, sure. Aparayam mitastvanyam prakritim vidime param Jiva Bhutam Mahabaho Yayedam Dharyate Jagat. Translation. Besides these inferior energies, O mighty armed Arjun, there is another, superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material, inferior nature. Purport. This is a verse from the Bhagavad Gita 7.5. For an explanation, see Adi Leela, chapter 7, verse 118. I'm going to read on to the next verse where there's more substantial purport from Srila Prabhupada. Text 117. Krishna Bholi se jiva anadir bahirmukha ateva maya tare de samsara dukha. Translation. Forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy, Maya, gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. Purport. When the living entity forgets his constitutional position as an eternal servant of Krishna, he is immediately entrapped by the illusory external energy. The living entity is originally part and parcel of Krishna, and is therefore the superior energy of Krishna. He is endowed with inconceivable minute energy that works inconceivably within the body. However, the living entity, forgetting his position, is situated in material energy. The living entity is called the marginal energy because by nature he is spiritual, but by forgetfulness he is situated in the material energy. Thus he has a power to live either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy, and for this reason he is called marginal energy. Being in the marginal position, he is sometimes attracted by the external illusory energy, and this is the beginning of his material life. When he enters the material energy, he is subjected to the threefold time measurement, past, present, and future. Past, present, and future belong only to the material world. They do not exist in the spiritual world. The living entity is eternal, and he existed before the creation of this material world. Unfortunately, he has forgotten his relationship with Krishna. The living entity's forgetfulness is described herein as anadi, which indicates that it has existed since time immemorial. One should understand that due to his desire to enjoy himself in competition with Krishna, the living entity comes into material existence. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langaite Grim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Just by way of introduction, my name is Ananda Chaitanya Das. I'm from London. You can maybe tell from my accent. It's a pleasure to be here in New Goloka Dham. It's my first time here. I've always wanted to come. I'm actually touring with, we're distributing Srila Prabhupada's books during the week, and during the weekends we have the books of my spiritual master, Srila Shriram Swami. We're showcasing the books. We're doing classes, talks in home programs and temples around America. We started off this year in Orlando, where the Sadhu Sangha retreat was. We're kind of heading up the East Coast to New York Rath Yatra next weekend, and then a couple of weeks after that, New Vrindavan 24-hour kirtan, like that. It's a wonderful community here. Many devotees, and there was we've been attending house programs, which tend to last late into the night. So we got back quite late last night, but it was a wonderful program with Hari Parashad Prabhu. And also there's another one this morning and this evening as well. This Madhya Leela 20, we see, this is Sanatan Shiksha. There's a few places which are very seminal conversations that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has with various personalities. So it's understood that there are 5 main conversations that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has, which really help us to establish the tattva of Krishna consciousness, as well as great insight into the rasa of Krishna consciousness. So one is Prakashananda Saraswati, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeats, first of all through his beauty and his humility, he melts the heart of the Mayavadis, and then through his philosophical exposition, his explanation of the Krishna conscious philosophy, he makes the Mayavadis doubt themselves, and eventually he converts them. So it's a wonderful conversation with Prakashananda Saraswati and his tens of thousands of followers. Then, of course, there is Madhya Leela 8. This is Ramananda Rai, Ramananda Samvad. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becomes a student. He puts himself in the position of being the student and asks Ramananda Rai all sorts of questions and pushes him to give more and more and more until they come to the apex of Krishna consciousness. Krishna's Vrindavan Leela, his pastimes with the Vraj associates, ultimately his pastimes with the gopis. That's Ramananda Samvad. And then there is Rupa Shiksha. So Rupa Goswami is instructed for 10 days in Prayag, Dash Ashwamedha Ghat. And in this time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really gives Rupa Goswami the essence of Rasa Tattva. And from that, we have a summary in the form of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Prabhupada summarized it further in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. And then there is, so the fifth I'm thinking is Sanatan Shiksha, and then there is, yes, Raghunath Das Goswami. I've read that the fourth is with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So the conversation with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, of course, he's a Mayavadi. And they have an extensive conversation. And again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he listens and listens and listens. For 7 days, he hears his exposition on the Vedanta Sutra. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is just sitting, listening very peacefully. And then at the end, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeats him with so many wonderful, powerful arguments. He's surprised and shocked. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, number one, his memory, and number two, it is very detailed and pinpointed insights. And then the fifth is Sanatan Shiksha. So this is what we're entering into here. Sanatan Goswami, actually I was just a couple of months ago, I was in Ramkeli. It was my first time in Ramkeli. And such a wonderful place. Relatively untouched. Even Ekachakra is becoming more and more built up. Of course, we have a beautiful big ISKCON temple there in a guest house. But there are more and more devotees, more and more visitors. It's becoming more and more sort of the hustle and bustle. But Ramkeli I found to be very peaceful and very, very wonderful. We went to the prison where Sanatan Goswami was detained. And it's like a big kind of huge dome, kind of a little like the structure is bigger, but this kind of shape. And I was just reflecting on, I think he stayed there 18 months, they told us. And it was a very dark, dingy space, just a little bit of light coming in. And I was just reflecting on how Sanatan Goswami wanted to escape the employ of the Nawab, join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and establish this mission, aid in the establishing of this mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which we're benefiting from. So the Goswamis and so many others over the centuries have gone through so much, and we're benefiting from their austerities. So Sanatan Goswami eventually, I won't go through the whole story, but he escaped from that prison. He eventually made it to Varanasi, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was staying at that time. He he was with Chandrasekhar Acharya and Tapan Mishra. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got the intimation, on a subtle level, he understood that Sanatana has arrived. Then he told Chandrasekhar Acharya, go out and see who's outside. And he went to look, and he couldn't see anyone. And then he said, no one's there, Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu said, no, there's someone there. So then he went out and he said, it's just some man with, some Muslim mendicant with long hair, Daravesh. He has long hair, he has a beard. You won't be interested in him, he implied. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, bring him in. So when he came in, he was very sheepish. Rup Sanatan was so humble. They were so qualified, but they were so humble. And when he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was elated. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was elated to see him. He says earlier, actually, he says, you too, Rup Sanatan, you're my old servants, very old servants. So he recognized him. He told Chandrasekhar Acharya, shave him up. So he was shaved up and given a fresh set of clothes. And he settled in. And then here we see the Sanatan Shiksha begin. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Sanatana Goswami in the fundamentals of Krishna consciousness. And it's interesting, he begins with really establishing what is Krishna and what is Maya. Differentiating between the two. The material energy we experience is very strong. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is warning Sanatana Goswami, but more than Sanatana Goswami, just like Krishna with Arjun. Arjun is asking all sorts of questions, but as a Nitya Siddha, he's asking on our behalf. Similarly, Sanatana Goswami is being instructed. He comes in front of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in all humility. And he says, Ke ami kene amoy jare tapatroy, eh iha nahi jani ke mona hitto hoy. He says, who am I? I'm no one. I don't know anything. He knew everything. Again, Sanatana Goswami is a Nitya Siddha, but he presents himself in front of his spiritual master as knowing nothing. Ke ami kene keme amoy jare tapatroy. I'm suffering in the threefold miseries of life. What are those threefold miseries? Suffering which is caused by one's own mind and senses, suffering caused by other living entities, and suffering which is caused by natural causes. So he said, I'm suffering. I'm suffering in these threefold miseries. Please tell me, how can I become free of this? How can I perfect my life? So this is how to come in front of the spiritual master. Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, this is how to approach. And in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is inspired to instruct Sanatana Goswami for 2 months. For 2 months he gives him insight. And he begins with the differentiation between the spiritual energy and the material energy. What is Maya? It's described that there's Kali and there's Maya. Kali is the general nature of the age. So we see that there's so much degradation in so many ways. But Maya is specific. Maya is out to get you. So Maya scans an individual. She sees whatever our soft points are, whatever our weaknesses are. And that's where she attacks. Very pointed. She has a very clear plan of attack. She's very, very intelligent. And so we have to be very careful. Once Srila Prabhupada was in Evanston, Chicago. He just arrived in our temple there. And they went to Lake Michigan, which is just a short walk down the road. And he looked over the lake, and they could see from there Chicago. And they saw all the high-rise buildings. It's a huge metropolis, of course, Chicago. And Srila Prabhupada looked over, and he cocked his head, very regal. And he looked over the city, and he said, many people would look at it and they would say what a marvelous city it is, what a marvel of engineering, so many huge buildings. Srila Prabhupada was unfazed by all of these things. And he just looked at it and he said, simply stacking stones. Simply stacking stones. And at some point, Maya will come and kick it all away. So this is the nature of the material world. We take this space so seriously in so many ways as conditioned souls. I speak for myself. But actually it's a kingdom of hallucination. This material world is a kingdom of hallucination, Srila Prabhupada said. So don't take the illusion too seriously. So we often talk about making Krishna the center of our lives, and Srila Prabhupada is often speaking about that. Once there was a man, and he was a rich man. Srila Prabhupada was in Juhu, and he came to visit. And this man, he was just glorifying his father. He was so great, he was so wonderful, he did so many great things, he helped so many people, he opened schools and built hospitals, he did so many things. And he just went on and on about his father. He was glorifying his father so much. And Srila Prabhupada was looking and just listening, being patient. And then at a certain point, Srila Prabhupada got impatient because he was just kept speaking about his father. And then Srila Prabhupada interrupted this young man. And he said, "And where is your father now?" His father was dead, of course. He said, "Where is your father now?" And the man was shocked. The young man was shocked. Srila Prabhupada was very stern. "Where is your father now?" "He's probably a cockroach in a commode." And the man was shocked. He was shocked. What could he say? He was shocked at just the strength of the knockback from Srila Prabhupada. And then he became humble. And he became ready to hear. It's a very heavy thing to say, a cockroach in a commode, in a toilet, But he could see that Prabhupada was a saintly person. When Srila Prabhupada smashed, he smashed in order to help, in order to serve, in order to give people Krishna. And so he kind of became quiet and became ready to hear from Srila Prabhupada. So when we try to enjoy the material energy, then there's another verse which is similar to this one that we just read. Krishna bhuli se jiva anadi bahirmukha. It says Maya japatiya dhare. That when the living entity tries to enjoy the material energy, this is in Prema Vivarta. It says when the living entity tries to enjoy the material energy, then Maya japatiya dhare. Maya gives a slap to the living entity. So Prahlad Maharaj says in the 7th canto that actually all suffering, when does suffering begin for a living entity? Suffering begins when we try to enjoy. The moment we try to enjoy the material energy, this is 7.742. The moment we try to enjoy the material energy, at that point, as suffering begins in this material world. So when I read that verse, I remember I was in the UK. These days I live in Hungary. I've been living 9 years in Budapest, Hungary. In order to be closer to my spiritual master, I spent 10 years at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And these days I live in Hungary. But when I was at the manor, we were distributing books one day. And there was a young man who was very interested. He was into spiritual life. He didn't know what path to follow. He was very happy to meet monks. And we brought him home. And I was showing him around the temple. He had darshan of the deities. And then I showed him up in the ashram where the monks live, with the view that one day he could live in the ashram also and join us. So I showed him the ashram, and then I showed him my locker. And I opened the locker door. And I just showed him that we live a simple life. And this is all my possessions in one locker, I was telling him. And I'm always trying to learn verses. So then I had a verse on my locker, on the inside of my locker door. And he was curious to see what the verse was. So there was a verse, Sanskrit, with the English translation. So he couldn't figure out the Sanskrit, he read the English translation. Maybe I can just read it. This verse gave him a shock. Yeah, this is it. Sukhaya dukha mokshaya sankalpa karmina sadapnoti haya dukham anihaya sukhavrita. Prahlad Maharaj says, in this material world, every materialist desires to achieve happiness and diminish his distress, and therefore he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. One is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. So he read this, and he was so shocked, so freaked out. He read it 2 or 3 times, and then he quickly left and didn't respond to any messages again. 7:42. Prahlad Maharaj, and it just shatters this idea that I want to be happy in this world. Because happiness, you're happy as long as you don't try to be happy. So how do we actually become happy then? What is the key? What is the source of being happy? Krishna says, Nate shuramate buddha, adi antavanta tu kaunteya nate shuramate buddha. An intelligent person doesn't engage in this material world in order to be happy. We, as devotees, we have to understand that we can become happy by cultivating a higher taste, by cultivating Krishna consciousness. And therefore we have to absorb ourselves in Krishna. Very often we talk about rejecting the material energy, saying no to material life. But real happiness, and there's a place for that, there's a space for that. Of course, we have to become sense-controlled, we have to become mind-controlled, we have to reject the material energy. But higher taste, what's the? Raso varjam rasopi asya param drishtva nivartate. You know, sometimes we talk so much about anarthas. I don't know about here, but I know in many communities where I go, there's so much emphasis on anarthas, and overcoming lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, illusion. And there is a space for that, agreed. But at the same time, we have to, you know, so that sometimes we can become like the International Society. We're meant to be the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. But sometimes it feels like we're the International Society for Anartha Consciousness. Because there's so much talk about overcoming anarthas. Many times if we just look to cultivate Krishna Consciousness, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, then gradually we can gain a taste for hearing about Krishna, for hearing about topics of Krishna. And in this way it becomes easier to let go of the lower taste. So I remember once there was a devotee who visited Bhaktivedanta Manor when I was there in the Brahmachari ashram, and he was with us taking lunch one day, and I was speaking to him. And I remember it was 2:00, and I said, "Forgive me, Prabhu, I have to run. I have a meeting." And then he said to me, "What meeting?" I said, "Oh, just a management meeting, Prabhu. It's just about the Brahmachari ashram, temple management, whatever it was." And then he said, "But we're speaking." I said, "Forgive me, Prabhu, maybe we can speak later." He said, "Later will never come." He said, "You guys are all the same. We're speaking about Krishna. No one seems to want to speak about Krishna." He said, "We're the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but all of you people are constantly too busy to speak about Krishna. What's your problem?" And it struck me. I mean, this was maybe 15 years ago, but I remember it. It struck me because it tends to be true in many communities. And he was speaking about Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna Katha, direct, neat Krishna Katha. And it was actually very beautiful. But it tends to be a rarity It tends to be an oddity. When someone speaks about Krishna, then it kind of seems a bit odd. Maybe he's a pretender. He's just trying to be Krishna conscious. He's not really Krishna conscious. He doesn't, he's putting it on. But this is what we're meant to do, actually. It's meant to be normal. I was discussing with Kamalini Maharaji the other day, and she was saying that she finds a great way to kind of enter into Krishna conscious topics, because we may speak about so many things. I'm often involved in management wherever I am, so then I often end up speaking about management, speaking about preaching, speaking about the topics of the day, preaching techniques, how to reach out to people, how to inspire people in Krishna consciousness. And all of these things are wonderful and they're important, and I'm not knocking them. But at the same time, just speaking about Prabhupada's books, speaking about the purports we read, speaking about Krishna, Krishna's name, form, qualities, abode, associates, pastimes, this is fundamental. And this will help us to cultivate an attraction towards Krishna. Why is reading and chanting difficult to do? Why is it a struggle very often in our communities? It's because we're not used to cultivating Krishna consciousness. We may chant for 2 hours in the day, but what do we do for the other 22 hours in the day? How Krishna conscious is our life? I'm really speaking for myself here. There's so many senior devotees here. This is for me. And in the struggle to cultivate Krishna consciousness, I realized that when I read together with devotees, when I discuss what I've read, when I talk about Krishna's pastimes, then chanting becomes so much more connected, more natural, more depth, more absorption, more desire to chant. Because when I chant and I have really good, strong hearing and chanting about Krishna, if I'm reading about Krishna, then I find that it fortifies my chanting of Krishna's names, because I know I have more attraction, more connection with the person whose names I'm chanting, or the personalities whose names I'm chanting. So in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Shavana Kirtana Jale Korila Sechan. We have a Bhakti Lata, we have a creeper of devotion. And we have to be very mindful to water that creeper. Korile Sechan, watering the creeper of devotion. How do we water it? Good quality hearing and chanting about Krishna. So Krishna says in the Gita, Mat Chitta Mat Kata Prana, Bodhyantascha Parashparam, Katyantascha Mam Nityam, Tushyanti Charamanti Cha. That when my devotees come together, what do? They talk about topics of me. They talk about Krishna. His name, his form, his qualities, his abode, his associates, his pastimes. And in this way, they become inspired. Tushyanti Cha Ramanti Cha. They become so happy, so satisfied. Ramanti is pleasurable. So, and then when we're chanting, what we're thinking of is very, very important. So sometimes you see that when we chant, devotees chant, then the words are being muttered, but the mind is somewhere else. So what we think of while we're chanting, what we're meditating on, what we're hearing is very, very important. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Gopakumar is instructed. It says, Yadyat sankalpa bhavatsa nija mantra japishyasi tat prabhavena tat sarvam vancha titam cha setsati. It's explained, he's told, Gopakumar is told that be very determined and very fixed in your chanting. Nija mantra japishyasi. When you're chanting your mantra, be very careful, because whatever you think about, tat prabhavena, by the prabhav, by the effect of this mantra, all of your wishes will be fulfilled. Whatever you want, whatever the desire is, the innermost recesses of your heart, that will be fulfilled. So we gradually have to desire Krishna more and more. You know, there's many career people, devotees who have jobs in the world, and they naturally want to progress further in your career, get promotion, higher pay, more responsibility, but the point is to get paid better, right? So everyone has a career plan. I remember when I was a student, I wanted to get the top marks, go to the best university, and get the best job. And I had a whole game plan. When I was 11, Indian families, it's like that. When I was 11, I had my whole life set out in front of me. My father was planning my wedding when I was 10 or 11, and he was saving up to make sure that he had enough money to pay for a big wedding at the age of 25. So by 25, I should got a first-class degree from the best university. I should be in a high-paid job. So by 21, I've graduated. I go into a job, establish myself, settle down, find a partner, and by 25, I should get married. And then by 28, I should have children. And by 50, I should be a billionaire, or at least a multi-millionaire. So this was the life set out in front of me. This was the plan. And so the point that I'm making is that we all have material goals. What are our spiritual goals? How am I going to go back to Godhead at the end of this life? And it's something that we really have to plan and really think about. How am I going to progress and advance in my Krishna consciousness? And so the books that we're touring with, like I mentioned, are the books of Srila Sri Ram Swami, and he's speaking about these things. He's speaking about planning our spiritual life, and the books are really focused on Krishna in Vrindavan. So he's mined the literatures of the acharyas, and he's writing about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Not just Leela, but Tattva and Rasa together, intertwined. And they're very beautiful books also, physically very attractive, beautiful artwork, but they're really helping devotees to learn more about Krishna in Vrindavan, learn about the goal of Krishna consciousness, so that gradually we can look to aspire for and desire Vrindavan. The conditioned soul has so many desires in the heart, so many material desires in the heart. The more we read about, hear about, and meditate on Krishna, and Krishna in Vrindavan, the more those material desires will be replaced with spiritual desires. I'm going to stop there because it's a few minutes, and if there's any corrections.
Yeah, I want to hear what your father did so he could fulfill his plan.
He was disappointed. My mother was more understanding. My mother was always more devoted to Krishna. My father was more Krishna, Ram, Shiva. He was more of a myriad of deities in his heart. But my mother was very devoted to Krishna. So when my mother was upset, then I told her, you gave me Krishna. My mother was reading to me every day from Bhagavad Gita, from Krishna book, etc. So I said, it's your fault. You gave me that seed. So that quietened my mother. My father was a little more upset, but I said, this is what I'm going to do. I want to join the temple, and I want to dedicate my life to Krishna. And he had to accept. He didn't have a choice. And I said, but you can give me the money, I can use it for the mission. Sorry?
He must have put pressure on.
To a degree, yes. Yeah, there was an element of that, for sure. But they also know, my parents knew me to be a determined person, and that there wasn't a discussion. I informed them about what I was going to do, and I was very clear and determined about my goal, and there wasn't much that they could say. So they were a little disappointed. At the same time, I told them, but what am I doing? Am I smoking? Am I drinking? Am I woman hunting? No. So they brought me up to avoid all of these things. I'm following the principles that you've taught me, and I'm dedicating my life to God, to Krishna. How can you argue? And I was strong, and I was very clear and humble. At the same time, I thanked them for everything they'd given me. and I'm reaping the benefits of their gifts for sure to this day. So I was humble but clear and stern at the same time. And they know that I love them, and so they were accepting ultimately. Not easy, but they could see I was resolute in my determination. I guess everyone has a different relationship with their parents, and we have to play it according to that relationship and who they are and who we are. So for me particularly, yeah, they were disappointed. They had grand ideas of how I would provide for them, but there's no happiness in the material world, and money's not going to make anyone happy, that's clear. And they knew that ultimately deep down. So I have an older brother, which really helped. He's taken care of them. Otherwise it's difficult, for sure. Otherwise I couldn't have been so resolute also. But I have an older brother. He's actually not married, and he's taking care of the house. So in that way I was also very fortunate. He's also a devotee, and I was very fortunate for sure. My mother got initiated a few years ago. My father unfortunately left his body, but my mother got initiated. So she taught me Krishna. She gave me Krishna. So then I felt it my duty to really invest in her and encourage her and support her in the process of taking initiation of a spiritual master. So she did that a few years ago. And I also felt that that was my duty to her, to invest. So she's happily chanting Hare Krishna in London and yeah, practicing Krishna consciousness. Yeah, the benefit of having, you know, I'm a 2-bit devotee. Do you have that phrase? 2-bit. Yeah. But yeah, we're trying our best, and I really benefited from having good parents who taught me morals and values and gave me Krishna at a young age. So I encourage parents to create. One thing is to tell the kids, okay, go to the temple, do this, do that. But the more naturally Krishna conscious the parents are, the more naturally devoted the parents are, the more natural Krishna conscious becomes for the children. Children don't see what you tell them to do, they see what's in your heart. They see what you really want. They're very perceptive, more perceptive than we may realize. Is it time to finish? Thank you so much for your kind attention. Forgive me for any offenses or mistakes. And Grantharaj Shri Chaitanya Chaitamrita Ki Jai. Last thing, please come to Hungary sometime. We have a beautiful farm, beautiful Radhasham Sundar deities, and you're all very welcome. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada Ki, New Goloka Dham Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I finished university, I worked for 1.5 years in banking, and then I joined the temple. So I had the experience of life.
Adi Purusham Kamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Kamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Kamaham Bhajami Kanvandam Maravindadalayatakam Bharavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Shesha Shobha
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Hari Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham Namaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrasya
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Hari Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham
Namo Vishnu Daya Krishna Prasthaya Mutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Govinde Namaste Panchati Deve Gauravani Pachak Neki Sesha Janyapari Chacha Tesa Charanday Jaya Sri Krishna Jayana Nityananda Yadvaita Gadana Siva Sadi Normakanda Krishna Chaitanya Shri Krishna Nidana Prabhu Nityananda Dvaita Gadada Siva Sadi Gaurata Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram
Just reminding everybody again, it's Harinam Sankirtan today, 11:30 at Weaver Street Market. I'm not sure exactly where we'll be standing, but you'll hear the car tolls. We'll be right around there. Okay. Nope, not until later in the day. 11:30, yes. Chaitadarpanam marjanam bhava mahanirapanam Shreya Karavya Chandrika Vitarnam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipanam Punamrita Swaranam Sarvatma Snapanam Parvijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahudan Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapitani Amita Smaranena Kala Etadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishami Hajjanina Nuraga Trinada Pisunijena Torora Pisuhishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadishakamae Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhakti Ahoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayata Vabada Pankaja Stita Duri Sajushim Vachintaya Nayanam Galadashu Daraya Varanam Gadgaduridaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tavanamagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayatam Nimishena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahiname Ashlisha Vapadamritam Banastumam Adarshanam Marmahato Karotiva Yatatava Vidadatu Lampatomat Pranatastusa Eva Napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh, my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate, I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Snanaraj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh, my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh, Govinda, feeling your separation, considering a moment to be